Well, my phone shows 5. I don't know if you want to give it a minute or start. I'm good either way.
I'm good to start. You there, Mike?
I'm here. Let me open that agenda back up.
Todd, just in the nick of time.
So we got 4 of us here. All right. All right, we'll get started. Thank you everyone for joining us for this our board meeting in June. I think we got 4 of us here, but we're only missing 1. But let's go ahead and get started. So the first item is the approval of the agenda. Has everyone had a chance to look that over? Any questions?
Oh, no questions here.
No questions, then I'm just looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and motion to approve the agenda, June 1st,
I'll move to
2021.
approve it. I'll second it.
So I saw Randy first it. Actually, I can't tell. Who motioned?
Andy Palmer motioned. I motioned.
Okay,
Mike.
Andy Paul. And who seconded?
Randy Meyer.
Okay, so Andy motioned and Randy second. So Todd, can we start the vote?
Spriggs, aye.
Andy,
Palmer, aye.
Randy,
Meyer, aye.
and Dinsmore, aye. And that's all we've got, right? There's no one else jumped on. Oh, Mark.
Yeah, actually, we've got everybody.
Okay,
So
Mark.
aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, second item is our minutes from last meeting. Did everyone have a chance to look those over? Are there any questions, concerns?
No.
Okay, no questions or concerns. Again, just looking for a motion in a second.
I'll move to approve.
Okay, Mark,
I'll motion. Palmer will motion. Or second that.
okay. Mark motioned and Andy seconded. So Todd, do you want to start us a vote again?
Spriggs, aye.
Randy,
Meyer, aye.
Andy,
Palmer, aye.
and Mark,
Hauser, aye.
and Dinsmore, aye. Okay, that takes that. Let me get just a bit back. So next is new items of business. Rick, actually, I guess, let me real quick. Did we have any other guests that we needed to thank for being here today?
Boy, doesn't look like it from my list. It's
I'm not seeing any as I thumb through and looks like the chamber's empty. Okay, then let's just go into new business then. Rick?
okay. This first item is pretty much a carryover from last month on the net metering policy. We didn't receive any comments from any of you, so we assumed that you like most of the changes that was presented last time. Let me share my screen real fast, see if I can do better than last month. Can you see that?
It is showing up.
Yes.
Okay, the main change I made between the only changes I made between what you saw last month and this month is change the name from, I think it was net billing last month, to renewable resource policy. And I think we talked about that, and I think most people kind of like that reference a little better. The second change from last time was after our meetings at UAMPS this last time, there was a lot of discussion about being able to quantify renewable resources on your system, whether you own them or not. And so I added this little paragraph here, or as part of 3, that they will, as part of their installation, they would install a production meter base. It's pretty small cost, and then we would supply a meter for that. And what that would do, it was allow us to track and identify exactly how many kilowatt hours their systems produce. Of course, the existing ones, we'd either have to, at the cost of the city, have to either go back and retrofit them if we elected to, but it just seemed to make sense to have that ability going forward on any new ones. Other than that, the policy that was sent out, it was identical to what you had last time. And so if there's, we can answer any questions you may have, but I would like to get a recommendation from the Power Board to the City Council to adopt these changes into the current net metering policy and changing the name to renewable resource policy.
So just
Hey.
a question, Rick. So for those customers that do have the old system, could they request it? Is it going to be, would it be something that they would pay for?
I haven't worked out the details on those retro ones. Some installations generally will be fairly simple because it would be able to be mounted just adjacent to the disconnect that's already required. And so you just have to cut into that conduit from the disconnect. And it could be actually on either side of the disconnect, from the inverter to the disconnect, or from the disconnect to the system. So we just have to coordinate that. If people are interested, certainly we can look into that. But I don't think it should be a huge cost. The base itself is probably between $50 and $100. And then it's mostly the labor to cut into the existing wiring and, excuse me, and just wire that meter base in. And it's just basically a standard house meter is all that gets put on there. And it wouldn't be used for any billing. It's just to record what the output of the renewable resources on the system are. And
Okay,
most
thanks.
utilities require that. We haven't traditionally up until now.
So Rick, when a solar company comes in, do they have to they've got to get the little badges to solicit in Washington City, correct?
Oh, goodness, I don't know about that side of things.
They can't just come start knocking doors. Don't they have to get a license, not a license, but one of the little badges for solicitation, don't they?
I honestly can't answer that. I would assume if that's a requirement for the city, they would have to. Now, whether or not they're doing that, I really don't have any idea.
Well, what I was wondering is if this was being handed out when they come in for that process, so they know as they inform our customers that this is the process that they've got to go through.
Mm-hmm. This is available on the website, and that's where most people get it from. So,
Okay.
but I could ask about that. Like I say, I didn't realize Washington had that requirement. So,
Well, I can't imagine that they, just like with pest control or anybody else doing the door-to-door sales, that they've got to have an application and a badge. I don't know. Does anybody else know on that?
is Steve Whittakin on?
Brock's on.
Do you know, Brock, by any chance? If the city requires a door-to-door sales badge or permit or whatever you want to call it.
I'm not sure. Denise would know. Not Denise, Tara now.
So we can look into that. But yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay, any other questions or? As I looked through it, I didn't have any other questions that you didn't answer last meeting or anything.
And we've sent it to Kerry Wheelwright at Utilities. He liked the changes, the clarifications, and the city attorney Thad and city manager Jeremy are reviewing it as well, and they haven't made any comments. So the next step would be to take it to city council for adoption.
No questions from anyone?
I don't have many questions. I thought the changes that we went over last time were good and didn't see anything else that stuck out to me.
No questions here.
Yeah, I don't have any questions either.
I'll go ahead and recommend it for adoption or to the city council.
Okay, so Randy recommended to take it to the city council for adoption of the new net metering policy update. Second,
I'll second that.
Mark. And Andy, do you want to start us off on a vote?
Yeah, Palmer, aye.
Todd,
Spriggs, aye.
Randy,
Meyer, I.
Mark,
Hauser, aye.
and Dinsmore, aye. Okay, Rick, next item.
Okay, this one I think I'm gonna have, or Nikki's gonna take the lead on that. She's been really good at cleaning up some of our older documents that have been on the website. Were you gonna share your screen? Nikki?
Yeah, I can. If I can
Okay.
figure that out. Um,
And you should have got a document showing the changes and the approach.
So on our website was this ordinance. It didn't have a digital copy, so I had to retype it. And in doing that, we just decided to update it. No changes to the actual ordinance page, just to Exhibit A, because instead of a letter, I created a form for them.
Nikki,
Uh-huh.
it says you've started sharing your screen, but we don't see anything, at least I don't.
Oh. I don't know. Let's look.
I do have the documents on mine, but I just thought it'd be easier if you were talking, you could move through the way you wanted to.
Yeah. Well, you might have to share them for me because I thought I had it set up, but let's see. Did that share anything?
Look like progress.
Blank page.
Yeah. Try it one more time. It's just coming up blank though.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay.
There we go.
Yep, we can see it now.
Awesome. Alrighty, so that's the ordinance page, and then you can't see my changes because it made me take them off, but this one on the email showed the suggested changes, making it go from just the letter of certification to a form, which is this document. I got this from looking at other power companies and what they required. So the healthcare provider will have to fill this out, specify the level of which they need the power. And then ultimately it does fall on the customer. It's their responsibility to manage their bill and to make sure that they are able to stay connected. The utility office will look at giving them a couple extra notices to let them know if they are delinquent and what needs to be done, so.
And I guess that's the main thing is this doesn't preclude disconnect for non-payment, but we go through a couple extra hoops, if you will, to make sure they're aware, you know, that they're going to be disconnected if they don't get their account. So it's not a means for people to get out of payment. And how many do we have on there, Nikki, right now?
We're less than 10 right now. We just got one last week, a new one, so they kind of trickle in, but we don't have a ton of them.
And we wanted,
Nikki,
Uh-huh.
on the agreement, down at the bottom, it says print name and title.
Uh-huh.
I think you probably change the print, change or add doctor's name. And so it doesn't, the patient doesn't think, or the homeowner doesn't think that's where their name goes.
Okay.
I know the
yeah,
NPI number should give it,
right.
but as I was looking at
Provider
it, that,
name, maybe?
yeah, provider name
or medical professional,
Okay.
something to that effect, so they know. And I'm wondering with that, would you want the homeowner to sign that agreement too?
It is up at the
Because-
top.
But they don't, do they? Oh, they do sign it there.
The
Okay, I see it.
customer, yeah.
So that, I wonder if there's some way of highlighting that, because like I said, I missed that.
Okay. We can try to maybe block off the professional, maybe put a little box around it or something, so it's kind of divided,
There you go.
but. And then the dates, it's supposed to be updated every 6 months, which is something I volunteered to try to help because it hasn't been done in the past, so.
How
this
many,
came
how
out-
many,
Yeah.
how many do we have? How many cases like this do we have?
Right now I would say there's less than 10, but we did in the
Okay.
last few months have somebody who had an agreement that hadn't been updated that became in this situation, so that's kind of how it came about to try to keep them current.
Are these usually like long-term, or is this, does it go past the 6 months? Like, could it last
Um,
years where they're coming in every 6 months and doing this with you?
From what I've seen, no, it's typically not something very long-term.
Okay.
Either they move or it is a temporary issue, or maybe it's a end of life care or something like that.
So it's not something that's gonna take a lot of time for you to be
No,
having to track and keep
I think
up
right
on?
now, like I said, I don't even think there's 10. I can think of 3 that I know of for sure that are on there. And with this information, every month we check and make sure they're not on our list of those that are behind on their payments, so that, you know, try to do the best, so.
and we shifted to the form to make it consistent. Before it was just a letter. So it made it, this will just make it easier to track and file and so really it's not really changing anything. It's just formalizing it into the same form. So we have all the same information and
And I think last year with some COVID stuff, there were a few more added, but I don't think they're active anymore, so.
Is this really something they started in 2009?
The last time that any update I found was in 09, yes.
Wow.
and so this one would be, I guess, depending on your level of comfort, you could either look at it and give us some comments, or you could make a recommendation to the council to move forward. Since it is a ordinance, we have to go through the council process, and the ordinance numbers would be updated. It'd be a 2021 dash something besides the 09,
09.
01. So
Is Denise still with us?
she retired, and Tara Pence is now our city recorder as of, well, I think
As of
today's
last
her
week.
official first day.
Okay, that's the only other thing I see is it's got Denise's name on the ordinance to change.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
once that goes official, I'm sure we'll make sure all those are correct.
The only suggestion I've got is, right above, you scroll, oh, let's see. Where it says to be filled out by a medical professional,
Okay,
maybe just add a line between where the customer fills out their stuff and then the qualified medical professional, like
okay.
a bold line between those, just to separate it out.
I'll try to see what I can fit. It's kind of tight on the document, but I'll get that so it's separate.
Other than that, it looks great.
I wonder if you, in there, you say this form will be reviewed and must be brought up to date. What if, would instead of brought up to date, renewed every 6 months?
Yeah,
Because brought up to date almost makes it sound like you just have to correct the phone number. It's on the form.
I was trying to see if it was on here. Yeah, I copied it off of the ordinance so we can change it on both of them. I tried to keep them consistent. Is that
Yeah,
what
I'm
you're
just-
looking at?
Well, no, I'm actually looking at the form and it says this form will be reviewed and must be brought up to date every 6 months. But that
Okay.
makes it sound like, oh, I just got to make sure you have my phone number.
Okay.
Whereas you're wanting that filled out again. So
Renewed.
you're going to want to say it needs to be renewed every 6 months.
Okay, and we'll change that on both the ordinance and that form.
Yeah.
so why don't you let us make those changes and we can bring it back next month for a recommendation. Work on the
Yeah.
formatting in a couple spots in that language, so.
Because you do say it like right above the signature, it does say it must be renewed.
Oh, yep, okay.
Yeah, just as I read that, and like I said, as I read brought up to date, it makes it, doesn't make it sound like I have to go through the process. I just have to tell you nothing's changed, and that's not the case.
All right, I'll make those so they're all consistent.
Thank you, that's great input.
Yeah, I like it. It's just as long as it doesn't take Nikki's time away from other things, so.
Yeah, and technically, the way it's written, it's the customer's responsibility to make sure their documents are up to date. But since there's so few, I think, but if it was to get more wieldy for her, you know, we could go back to, it's just totally up to them. And if it's not up to date, then it's becomes kind of null at that point.
Yeah. Okay. And I think you guys do. It does say it's the responsibility of the customer to keep it up there, so.
Yeah, maybe we could even, if we could get their email and stuff, it can be, it may just consist of a reminder to them that you need to update this form. And if they don't, then, you know, they're outside of the policy.
I could
Yeah.
add email on there. Some of them I'm afraid are, it's a well, I guess the family member's email could be on there too.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, these are sometimes difficult situations that, you know, are working with, so.
I think you can just say contact email. That way it's
Yeah,
whoever they want to contact.
all right. Thank you.
I think it looks good, yeah. Okay, so we'll just kind of push that to look at it again next month and finish it up.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. All right, then next, or anything else on that, or anything else on new
No.
business, or? Okay, then on to operations, regular business.
Okay, this will just be a, you know, fairly quick report on what we've been working on the department. It's no surprise that we continue to get new developments of various sizes coming in on basically a weekly basis. And so we're working with those developers to hopefully stay ahead of what's coming down the pipe and meet their needs and keep the system at a reliable level. Last week, the city council did approve the 2022 fiscal year budget. There really wasn't any significant, there wasn't any changes to ours, so they're always have been very supportive. Again, we have some various projects to allow us to transfer capacity we have between various circuits, to get a larger bucket truck. And we're thinking of a used variety since we don't use it a ton, to save some money. And then we'll do some upgrades at the Main Street substation that will give us some switching flexibility that we haven't had up till now. And it'll probably take better part of a year to get that implemented. So our generator season actually started today. We're cycling, if you will, through each of our 3 units today. In fact, Jake's probably switched to the 3rd unit as we speak. And the first 2, I haven't talked to him about the 3rd one. The first 2 started up great and ran about 2.5 to 3 hours each. Really good. And starting tomorrow, I would say more days than not, we'll be running all 3 units. Power prices right now are already high. UAMPS reported this morning some of the wholesale prices on the spot market are as high as $150 or more. And so we'll be keeping a close eye on that. I'm gonna share my screen again.
Rick, did you see the St. George announcement on what they're doing on their green, orange, red notifications?
I did. And in fact, Nikki and I have had that discussion this morning. We'll probably, depending on, what's going on, use Facebook to post things to hopefully encourage people to conserve, particularly during the peak hours from about 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock. That's typically when we peak. So
what do you think on what they said for the reactions, like turning the temperature up and when it hits those? Are those effective responses, and are they going to help?
Yes, I think they will help some. I don't think they'll be dramatic because it's going to be a voluntary program and people are going to be hot and they'll say, well, I don't matter. I'll let my neighbor do it, kind of thing. So you know how those voluntary programs go, particularly after 4 or 5 days of really hot string. But I think it's worth a shot. And this article I have up now, I don't know how many saw this, was in KSL just over the weekend. And it was based on analysis from the Western, the NERC, North American Electric Reliability Corp. A lot of the article was targeted around California, but as we saw last year, problems in California spill over to here on both pricing and resource availability, because we're all more or less competing for the same resources. And as various generation stations get retired, that just makes, your supply smaller, and it's the old supply and demand that you learned in school. As things get tight, prices tend to go up. So, and so this, I'm not going to read it, but it's an interesting article. If you didn't see it, you can go to KSL and look for it. But it kind of paints a picture that we're in the West, not just in Utah or Washington, we're really on the edge as far as depending on what temperatures do. I found this one kind of interesting, this paragraph here. It says 1 gigawatt of power can supply about 1 million homes on average, but as few as 200,000 during a hot summer day. So that gives you an idea of the challenges you have during the summer. Is, that's a 5-to-1 change there. How much people's loads go up. So I personally think at some point in time, and I don't think it's probably too distant, to get people's behavior to change, at some point, we may end up having to consider time of use rates, where the costs during those periods of time are substantially higher than they are other times, which is what happens to us as a utility. That I think would change behavior more drastically than voluntary programs, and there's nothing wrong with that, and I hope they're successful. But so this just gives, like I say, it was just kind of an interesting timing that this article, I think it was Saturday or Sunday, one of the two. Yesterday being a holiday, throw my week all off. So anyway, it's going to be a very interesting summer for us and for the entire West as well. So, so back to our generation, they'll probably run most days. Of course, we only have the 3 units or 6 megawatts. After that, what we're above that, we have to buy on this open market. Obviously, worst case scenario, if UAMPS isn't able to secure it, we would have to curtail load to whatever resources that we have. And obviously, we don't want that to happen. But that's just something to be aware of, depending on what happens on temperature, how widespread it is, what the renewable resources are doing. For example, today, we have roughly 2 megawatts of wind between our 2 wind projects, and which would be about 2,000 kilowatts. We were getting about 60 out of those 2,000 out of our 2 wind products. So that's the challenge with, I think, particularly wind. It's either there or it's not, and obviously we can't make wind blow when we need it. So it's a challenge. So. Any questions or thoughts on that?
Only thought I've had is, as we've been talking about solar, is there any program or incentive that we could give residents of our city to have solar? It seems like that's when we want to have the solar power coming into the grid, is during the peak hours of the day.
And that's part of the challenge, is the evening peak occurs after solar comes off. So there's a secondary peak that occurs because the loads are staying high because the heat doesn't go away until several hours after the sun goes down. And I think, if they can offset their own load, they are incentivized to save. And the other side of that is, during the other 9 months of the year, we're generally long on resource, and solar is very cheap. You can get it for the other 9 months for about 20 cents. So it's a real challenge because you have this high spike for just that short period of time. And anyway, that's my thoughts on that. Way back when the city first started the solar program, they did do a rebate. But at that point, I would probably defer that money to a city resource directly, since we would have control. Part of my concern on the we have no control on how they're maintaining them, if they're even operational. And so these production meters would actually help with that to see if they're even working. Right now, we really have no way of knowing that.
Yeah.
Shifting on to various projects, the Turner Underground tie from the north part of the Turner Turf Farm up to through the Bluffview Apartments, it's complete. And we'll probably be shifting some load around there before too long to utilize that a little better. The fiber optic project over to Buena Vista Sub is the only thing remaining is to have our fiber splicer come in, and he'll be here Thursday and either get it done Thursday or Thursday and Friday. So we'll have an active fiber link to our Buena Vista Sub, and that's the last one that's been on radio. The crews are working over by the Main Street Sub to establish a tie between two circuits there. That'll allow us to move some load from one of the transformer bays to the other to help balance the loads. I'm guessing they should be done with that in the next couple of weeks. And we'll be able to take some load off of the circuit that feeds around the rec center and move that to one that's been hasn't been utilized very much just because of how the circuits were configured. We did on the impact fee and the rate studies. I know I've talked about that the last couple months. We did get the updates from UFS, and I've given those to Jeremy and Thad to review. Last I talked to Jeremy, I was just seeing if he was on. Doesn't look like he is. There's a couple other impact fees that will be coming up as well. And so they're considering, I don't know, I'm going to say combining, but at least the review with the council, combining those together. So it's kind of a, instead of doing it 3 or 4 end to end, we talk about them together. And so when those, and I still would like to have UFS make the presentation to the power board and the council at the same time. I don't have those dates yet, but it's somewhat in Jeremy's court to get that scheduled now. But I don't think that'll be too far out. So we've got the documents and we will keep you updated on when that occurs. One other item, I think, well, at least three of you were probably on the board a couple years ago when we participated in the Light Up Navajo project, where we sent a couple crew members and some equipment over for a week to help on the Navajo reservation, get people connected to their power system. The next project will be in the spring of 2022, so it's just under a year out. We'll probably, I'm putting together some numbers with Jeremy, and we'll present those to the council to see if they're supportive of that. It was a good experience, and I hope they allow, we have a couple of crew members that would like to participate, so. We had some new testing equipment come in, and we had a safety meeting on how to use that. I think it'll help make one, the crew's a little safer to work. We're always looking ways to improve safety, as also make it more efficient on tracking problems down when we have them. It's a great tool that really was relatively inexpensive for the benefit of it. We had Dan went over to Grand Junction, Colorado, one of our linemen, for a week, received some training on how to search for when you have a cable fault, how to most efficiently locate those faults. Nikki did an online course with APPA on general utility basics. Again, we try to make sure our crews have opportunities to improve and keep their education up. The crews changed out 2 poles right by Mark's house. And I know Todd will appreciate it, but the work's done except for getting the communications transferred. So when we're able to get those lines transferred, we'll pull the old poles, and I think it'll clean up around his house a little bit as well. And we've done some work a little further west on 100 South. There was a secondary pole that nobody really liked. We've been able to work with the property owners to get that located in a better spot. And again, once communication moves off of that, we'll remove the old pole, and it'll clean up that area for those customers. Jake did his monthly substation checks, didn't find anything significant. So I think we're ready for the summer for our system, and not anticipating any significant problems. Hopefully that, the system performs like it has the last few summers and continues to do well. So any questions on kind of the Washington side of things? Okay, if none, we'll move over to the UAMPS side. Hopefully everyone received this email or something similar to this today on the annual member conference, which will be held August 15th through 18th in Squaw Valley, California. Did you guys receive these invitations? Or do we need?
I did.
Okay.
Yep.
So again, if you are able and willing, we'd love to have you attend this. The city will cover the costs for, your transportation, yourself, and motel. If you want to bring your spouse, you can. They even have family activities if you're, but the additional costs for them, for say, if you were to fly up there, those would be your responsibility for your spouse. So, but it should be good. They've got good speakers. And so I'm excited. I'm planning on going. Jeremy is, and again, this just went out today. I haven't heard from the council. So there's a link there that you can start the sign up process. But if you'd let myself and Nikki know if you're planning on and what we can do to help on those arrangements, just please let us know.
Hey, Rick, this is Andy or Nikki. I don't think I received that email. If you could forward it over to me, that'd be great.
Okay. I'll
It
double
could be
check.
lost in my inbox, but I don't remember seeing it.
It would have come from a Jackie Coombs. You see down there at the bottom. So, but I can follow with her and make sure you're on the list too. Did anyone else not get it?
No, Rick, I just checked and I did get it. I apologize.
Okay, great. Well, if you're like me, you get so many emails that unless you recognize it off the top of your head, that it's easy to miss them.
Especially after the long weekend. So
yeah, we tend to get buried.
My wife did look at flights, and there's actually flights straight out of St. George into Sacramento, which is still about 2 hours away, but they were, I think, $300 round trip. So not too bad out of St. George. You'd have to get a car at that point, but there's other options as well. But if you look, I think ahead of time, you probably would get pretty good deals on things.
It's not too bad.
Yeah, and obviously we'd, I again encourage you to do that. It's about, I think it's right around a 9-hour drive, so that's an option as well. So whichever way works best for you and your timing. I know Todd and Randy went to the one up in Jackson, and I think they both felt like it was very worthwhile. Am I putting words in your mouth, or?
Oh, it was very beneficial as far as I'm concerned.
So, and it's, and so I think the information, and again, it comes back to training that you received there, and hopefully we can get some of the council to go as well, is very well worth the time and the expense to go. So again, we'll help you. You can go online, make your motel reservations, and we can reimburse you, or if we need to, we can put it on, arrange it through the city. Just let us know how we can help you make that happen. And there's agendas in there. There's a list of activities for Monday afternoon and those kind of things. So. Okay, going through some of the UAMPS projects, really no significant change on the Central St. George project. We continue to have our study group to work on long-term planning. We're hoping to get Rocky Mountain to agree to move the next transformer addition up a couple of years. And that's an ongoing challenge with them. We did have actually this morning a voltage transformer over at the River Sub, which is by Four Master, where it comes down over kind of by the dinosaur tracks. That substation had a voltage transformer that failed. It's one used for measuring what goes on in the sub. And so we actually shifted the UAMPS load over to the Dixie system for, I think it was over there for about 8 hours today. And I did get a text that they've got that fixed and we're back to our normal configuration. So if all of us in the utility does our job right, you guys don't even know that that went on. And St. George did a great job on taking care of that quickly. We're keeping to watch, we continue to watch system challenges. Again, our biggest vulnerability on the system up to ours would be a fire between the St. George substation and the Central Red Butte substation next to Central, about 25 miles north. So hopefully every time you hear a fire erupt here or there, I always take a pause and find out where. I know St. George had a fire of some sort over by the Elks Lodge. It was either yesterday or on Sunday. So this time of year, that can definitely happen. Our Nebo project is running well. They did a lot of upgrades over the fall. They're planning on, at least while the temperatures stay up, they'll be running full output most of the day. And I would think as the summer goes on, they're running probably about 16 hours a day right now. And before too long, I suspect they'll be probably running 24/7 on that output or that plant. The Vail project continues to do well. It's a small resource, but it's pretty consistent. However, we're running about half a capacity, and that's just determined by how much gas the Kern River pipeline is compressing at the time. So if they compress more, there's more heat, and we're able to run more. We get about 600 kilowatts out of our 1,000 that's allotted there right now. one of the more interesting presentations at the UAMPS meetings. It's under the Government and Public Affairs project. And I'm not gonna, there's a bunch of slides here. Most of them I'll go by really quick. But the main point is obviously President Biden and the Democrats are focused on climate change. You know, they've had the summit recently where that was one of his priorities, where he's committed to significant reduction from the US over the next 15 to 20 years. And this is a slide deck from Mike Squires from UAMPS. And so I took some of them just to, his intent with this was to kind of show, I mean, there's lots of different ways to address the environment, clean energy, and different things. You've got to have the right appropriations. You've got to have a standard. There's a faction wanting to do a carbon tax. And in the meantime, President Biden's set a goal, at least right now, for 2035 to have all electricity generated by non-carbon resources, which is a very aggressive goal. And there's ways that have been proposed over the years, you know, the Green Act, the Clean Energy Act, that have passed depending on who controls what house at the time. You know, different proposals to try to achieve that goal. One that comes up all the time is a carbon tax, where they would tax you based on how much you emit. But it seems to come up a lot, but it never, and so far has gotten significant traction or enough support to get it through both houses. This was a quick little summary that he put together. The bottom one here is what's being proposed now that sets the target for zero emissions by 2035, which is, sounds like a ways out, but in utility timeframe, that is really pretty short. You think of how long it's taken to get our carbon-free power project as far as it is, and we're still another 8 years out, 9 years out before we'll see output from that. And so one of the things, and I apologize that this is blurry, but it kind of came to us blurry. This was what this clean energy standard is trying to propose, is they would take, you would start off with a baseline calculation from what you had in 2017, 18, and 19. And then it has this graduated scale, depending on how clean, if you will, you were in the baseline years, depends on how big your steps will be between 2024 and 2031. Everybody would hit 84% from carbon-free resources in 2031. Right now, one of the interesting things, and again, UAMPS works really hard to help us interpret and sort through all what's being proposed. They're right now not making any distinction between coal resources or natural gas. You know, natural gas is cleaner than coal. But right now, basically, it's if you emit carbon or you don't emit carbon, whether it qualifies for this. So far, nuclear and hydro count towards those clean energy goals. Does it apply to us? Definitely. If you sell more than 20 megawatt hours during a calendar year, we'll sell more than that in less than a month. So we definitely fall under this, and this is where generation that is not associated with the release of greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. I suspect as it goes through the process that there would need to be some sort of recognition that not all carbon emitting resources are the same or emit to the same level. They're looking into how this third bullet point that says partial credit will be given to resources like this is carbon capture and this is a heat recovery, kind of like our Vail plant. And so depending on how they treat those, you know, the value of that Vail plant may go up or down because the heat from that is generated from a carbon resource, but we capture what would otherwise be, you know, lost heat. So and to be honest, some of these calculations, UAMPS is in the middle of trying to evaluate where all of its members would fall. There's still a lot of questions on what's being proposed. So this was one of their looks was, you know, by 2023, we might need to be 37%. And again, you hit this 84 in 2031. Our green resources are our wind. We have 2 solar projects coming up next year. Vail, depending on how it's treated, would be a resource that could potentially qualify for this, but it's nowhere near our needs. Our biggest carbon-free resource coming up would be the carbon-free power project. And so this plays in, you know, we're resource short during the summer. And depending on how this plays out really limits or dictates what we can consider as a valid resource, because we can't spend millions of dollars on a resource we can only use for 5 years, if that makes sense. You know, I've looked into and considered adding more generators here at the plant. But if they're only going to be useful for a few years, we may not get be able to run them long enough to get that return on the dollar. Their proposal includes penalties, or you can pay basically to allow you to use a carbon resource, but it's pretty significant. I mean, that's 4 cents a kilowatt hour, that $40. And they're calling it this ZEC, I think it's zero emissions energy credit, something like that. That would become potentially a commodity that they would, you know, trade, or you could buy from someone or sell to someone. And then they've got proposed penalties that are pretty substantial. And so the main takeaway that Mike came up with is, you know, really new resources really should be zero carbon emitting in order to qualify. Now, whether or not this program makes it as currently shown, I don't know that it will, but I think something's going to be coming down the pipe that's going to be obviously somewhere between where we're at now and something like this clean energy standard. I know that's a lot to throw at you real fast, but I just want to make you aware that you know, this is a hot topic, a big topic of discussion at the federal level, and you know, there's could be decisions made that dramatically impact our utility and the resources that we can participate in. Any questions on that? Did we lose some people? Oh no, they're up there.
No,
Okay.
I don't have any. Anybody else?
No questions here.
As I see going through this, it's more it keeps me up at night to think of how we're going to address some of these in such a short time frame. So just kind of leading into that a little bit, just report on some of the projects we're looking at. We've signed up for the Red Mesa Solar Project. It's on target to be online next June, a year from now. The Steel Solar Project is December of 2022. And those are two that we've signed power purchase agreements from. Some other projects that are being investigated, and UAMPS has formed some study projects, is the Enchant project. It's in San Juan, New Mexico. It's a existing coal plant, and their proposal or idea is to buy, the current plant is scheduled to be decommissioned next year. And UAMPS has some members that participate in that, but this Enchant group wants to buy that plant, upgrade the plant, and install a carbon capture where they would capture the carbon emissions and stuff it in the ground. And so we're looking into that. The initial price points that they've been saying look really good. It says they're in the 30s. But one of the questions on this is, how does it play in, or how does it fit into these potential clean energy standards that are being proposed? You know, you wouldn't want to sign up for a power purchase contract for 30 years if you can't use it for 30 years.
Rick, what are the ones that we've signed up for? Where are those resources coming from?
The Red Mesa one is located down on the Navajo Reservation. It's actually just north of, it's in the Utah side of the Navajo. I'm gonna call it east and north of Kanta, is where it is. The Steel Solar Project that we've signed up for is by Plymouth, Utah, right up on the Utah-Idaho border. You know where that steel mill, the Nucor steel mill, it'll be right adjacent to that steel mill plant up there. The Enchant carbon
How
capture,
how do they generate their power?
these will be solars. Those two are solar. Solar panels, just like it's on your house. And then again, the Enchant project, again, I think some of these carbon capture, it's an unproven technology to a degree. They've done it on small scale, but not on large scale yet. So we just have to evaluate, keep an eye on that. In that same area in San Juan, New Mexico, there's another solar project that this one has a little bit of a twist. Is if we chose to, we could sign up for a battery component. However, the initial battery pricing was quite high, and you pay that high price not just for the summer, it's every month. And so when we get the numbers back on that, we'll have to determine whether or not that makes economic sense on just the solar portion, or if we'd want to add battery to it as well. And again, the battery would help extend the output from that plant over that secondary peak that occurs when the sun goes down. Another project is up in Wyoming. It's called the Muddy Creek Heat Recovery Project. And it would be basically a close cousin or a little bigger cousin to what our Vail heat recovery plant is. It's at the head of the Kern River natural gas pipeline. So one advantage of being at the front end, it should probably have more of a consistent output. The main downside I see right now is, like I've said, it depends on what these clean energy standards, how much does that heat recovery qualify for? Or is it going to be considered a carbon resource or not? And so we need to look into that. And UAMPS reported that there are other projects that they said aren't quite mature enough to bring forward, both wind and solar in Utah and Idaho that they're looking into. So I would expect as time goes on, we'll keep seeing more and more of these projects come through. And we just will need to evaluate the benefits. Again, we continue to grow, and at the same time, it's hard to know how to fill that growth with all the changing playing field, it feels like at times. You know, one administration can come in and have one set of rules, and then you could get another one come along and change the other. So it would probably be better if it was done at the congressional level instead of executive order levels. I think those are more volatile than if it goes through Congress. So we've already talked to, you know, as far as I guess the good news is, if you remember back in January, we bought some summer resources. 2 megawatts started today, which is helping us. And we bought 6 megawatts in July and August. So the good news is, at the time we thought it was a really high price, but from what we're seeing, we did really good. And now I wish we would have bought more. You know, you're never right. We either bought too much at too high a price or not enough at a lower price. So we did what we felt was best at the time. But for example, our June product was about 52 cents, and most of today is running between 65 and 85 cents a megawatt hour. So right now I'm thinking we should have signed up for a couple more, but no matter what you do on those, you're going to be wrong. So we did our best, and you know, we'll just work with what we did. CRISP, or the Colorado River Storage Project resources, the Glen Canyon Dam, Flaming Gorge. Obviously with the drought, they're having a bit of a challenge to meet their obligations from their hydro plants. And again, that can also play into the overall pricing of what happens. You know, if that system, and particularly the Columbia River, if they aren't able to have hydro output like they typically do, that can cause a shortage, which again would increase pricing. Our 2 wind projects overall had fairly good capacity factors, right around 30%. The Horse Butte was about $66 a megawatt hour, and Pleasant Valley about $55. Again, when they're operating, they're great resources. The challenge is you just never quite know when they're going to be there and if it's going to help you or not. The good news, the wind forecast for Friday, Saturday, Sunday looked good, and so hopefully over the weekend and on Friday, when the temperatures are supposed to be peaking, hopefully we'll get some output from those wind projects. Okay, and the last area was the carbon-free project. I believe you should have got this email as well. If not, let me know. I want to go through, UAMPS has been putting out this set of slides. Since a lot of the contractual discussions are done in executive session, it's always a challenge to know what we can share publicly. And so they put these slides out as far as what public information is. Subscription obviously is everybody's big concern. They're making progress with the Washington utility, which signed a letter of intent for 150 megawatts, as well as several Arizona utilities. They're working with BPA and WAPA, Western Area Power Administration, are both federal transmission systems. And they're working out ways that you could basically trade output in one area of their system for another, which allows people to come into the carbon-free project more easily. one of the things they're working on, I think it's Oregon and Washington, have state laws that prevent them from utilities from signing up for a power sales contract without a vote of their entire citizens. And so they're working on, they call it a development coordination agreement, which would allow utilities in those states to still participate with the same basic financial obligation that we do under the power sales contract. But it just has a little different long-term commitment. And so they're working through that, and this would make it easier for some of those utilities to participate. And so that's probably the UAMP staff, one of their biggest focuses right now is getting this agreement put together to where, again, there'd be similar financial obligation as we are, and allow the project to move forward, which as more people come on, it decreases our risks and our cost commitments. Probably won't bore you with all the details. As far as the project, where some of the progress is being made, they've mowed the site and are working on biological cultural surveys are completed, and then they'll actually start some of the boring work on the site, which obviously affects foundation and other designs, what the results of that is. They've signed a letter of intent with a potential operator. And so they're working through some of the details of that. And they hope to have that done in the next couple months. And what that will do will help firm up the operation expense portion of the project costs, long term. The one that they're working with operates currently nuclear plants, so they're familiar with the process and what's needed to operate them. They continue to work with the Department of Energy, as I'll talk about in the next slide, and we've talked about before. Instead of a 12-pack module pack unit, it most likely will be a 6-pack, and which is fine. As far as I'm concerned, we could have a 1-pack if it met our project, our price target and met our needs. They did receive an updated proposal cost estimate from NuScale for the 6 nuclear power module configuration, and it was still just under the $55 target and kept the 2030 commercial operation date intact. So they still have some questions on that proposal and estimate, and so UAMP staff is working back and forth with them. The next step, they've indicated in the next 2 to 3 months would probably, the current budget is roughly, I want to say it was 12 or $13 million. In order to keep the COLA work on track, that budget will need to be bumped up. Obviously, getting subscription would make getting that approved by yourself and the councils, not only Washington, but the other participants, would make it much, much easier and much less risky. And so that's why subscription is such a focus. So we'll see in the not too distant future, I'd anticipate they'll call it a budget amendment, which they'd bring forward and require approvals by all the governing bodies of the participants in the next, I'm anticipating 2 to 3 months. So the project's moving forward. Obviously it'd be nice if it would just magically all fall into place in a short period of time, but it's moving forward in the right direction. but it's moving forward slowly. So any questions on that project? And that's really all I have overall for UAMPS.
No questions here.
I don't have any.
Yeah, no questions here either.
And keep reading those notes or those emails that come out from UAMPS. That has a lot of the same information, and it just makes it, you're able to stay on top as things come out. So when they try to do that on a monthly basis, so. And that's all I have, other than, I don't know if do we want to stay in the same format for July or meet in what's now an empty room? I'm good either way, so.
When's the next meeting? July 7th, is that right?
I want to say it was like the 3rd,
July 6th.
No, the
6th.
6th.
I may be in Pennsylvania or New England, but I can join via the internet if needed.
Okay, and I'd anticipate that all of the city meetings are gonna probably remain a hybrid. So even if some of us wanted to meet together, those, you know, particularly if you were traveling or something, I think the Zoom ability will remain there for probably forever now. So
Sounds good.
I guess for now, we could probably, you know, just plan on the same. But if there's and maybe Nikki can send out just an email a little before and see how people are feeling.
Maybe the week before to make sure then we'll know our schedules and we can determine that
Okay,
before she sends out the public notice.
okay.
So Rick,
Okay.
will you be meeting there at the chamber building?
Yeah, if we do it in person, it would be there at the city council room.
I do miss my soft cushy chair.
Is there any other questions or comments? None?
No.
All right, motion to adjourn. Does anyone have a second?
I'll go ahead and motion to adjourn.
Okay, Todd motioned.
Second it.
Randy seconded it. So, Andy, do you want to start?
Absolutely. Palmer, aye.
Mark,
Hauser, aye.
Todd,
Briggs, aye.
Randy,
Meyer, aye.
Dinsmore, aye.
Thank
Okay,
you, everyone.
thank you, everybody, and
Good.
have a great evening.
Yep.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Rick.
guys. Yep. Thank you,
Thank you.
Rick.
Recording stopped.